A street preacher armed with a speaker, a microphone and a camera strapped to his chest is now banned from the Village, the Pride Parade and any event related to Pride Month after being arrested yesterday during a commotion here at Church and Wellesley. Now, this neighborhood was not the first stop on the religious group's street tour yesterday, and I'm being told it will not be their last. Tonight, we take a look at the fine line between freedom of speech and disturbing the peace.
If you don't like what someone's sharing, if you don't like what someone has to say, the law says we exist.
Our cameras captured verbal clashes that erupted in the Village as a leader of the religious group Christ Forgiveness Ministry began amplifying his beliefs.
Would you tolerate me as a Christian? Go away? Okay, so you're a bigot.
David Lynn, seen here on the microphone, was telling passersby that he's, quote, coming out of the closet as a Christian. All of this was also being live streamed on the group's YouTube channel.
So you tolerate me as a Christian?
As long as you tolerate me as a gay man.
Within 15 minutes, members of Toronto's LGBTQ community clapped back, hoisting signs that read, "Love is love." They've been on guard since last month when another preacher named Dore Love took to the streets here in the Village, preaching explicitly about homosexuality being sinful. There was no arrest in that case. Last night, police responded about 30 minutes after the group's arrival. A patrol officer spotted the commotion and called for backup.
Let's turn the microphone off.
That's not the main issue.
Well, it is right now because see all these people around here?
Okay, so
you are literally right now.
I'm not literally causing anything. No one told them to block the sidewalk. What did I do? Back up. I'm with him. Back up.
Lynn was then put in handcuffs. The charge, disturbing the peace.
We don't have enough evidence currently to charge him with anything that relates to hate speech or a hate crime. However, we would like more videos to come in from the community that shows what he was talking about.
Yeah, but you're pushing religion into people's faces.
The Village was not the first stop on the group's itinerary. Hours before the arrest, in another video posted to their YouTube channel, Lynn hit the streets in Kensington Market.
You are impinging upon the freedom and the ease of the people here.
Police were also called to the scene to help keep the peace.
If people were out here talking about Santa Claus, you wouldn't have a problem.
Outside the courthouse today, here's what Lynn had to say about his arrest.
I shouldn't be in this position. I didn't do anything illegal. We're on a part of a Toronto tour where we're going all over Toronto for the next 7 days and sharing the gospel to everybody.
Now, if you've ever been by the Eaton Centre, you've likely seen this group before. They're set up 7 days a week right at the corner of Yonge and Dundas. Now, we don't know what neighborhoods are on their agenda, but Lynn does tell City News that they plan on taking their message to all of Toronto's 25 wards.
It was footage that went viral, the arrest of a Christian preacher outside an underground station. Now the pastor in question has spoken for the first time about what happened, telling us he's now calling for better protection of street preachers after being accused of a hate crime. However, the Met, which has since paid him damages for wrongful arrest, insists officers were right to investigate after a 999 call and remove him from the area. Helen Drew has the story.
What are you doing here? I am preaching. You are preaching. I'm going to require you to go away.
This video has been watched by millions.
You will listen when you are dead. You will listen when you are dead.
Olawale Ilasomne was detained outside Southgate Underground Station in February after a 999 call claimed he'd been Islamophobic. Today he's calling for better rights for street preachers, first handing a petition in to the Home Office.
I want freedom for every Christian street preachers. The handling of what the petition is to give everybody the freedom of speech.
You say Christian street preachers?
Christian street preachers.
Street preachers of other religions?
I don't know any other religion.
Then on to Scotland Yard, who recently awarded him £2,500 for wrongful arrest. He admits he described Islam as an aberration, meaning a departure from what's normal, but says that is his point of view as a Christian.
The Met says it respects the rights of street preachers of all religions and backgrounds, but if the language someone uses is perceived as being a potential hate crime, it's only right that they investigate. They say in this case it was appropriate to remove him from the area.
They're trying to persuade him to leave. Police officers very relaxed.
A former senior Met police chief says removing him would have actually been in his best interests.
They did not arrest him for hate crime or public order offence. Actually, what they did was detain him under the breach of the peace, which is an ancient power that we have, after they tried to persuade him to move from the area, and he declined to move from the area. Now, if he'd stayed in that area, the police would have been criticised because somebody would have probably smacked him in the face.
Christian Concern is backing the petition and says they want to make sure police training protects freedom of speech.
The freedom to speak means that sometimes people will be offended. And what has been happening is that police officers think when they're on the ground, on the beat, if someone says, I'm offended by what that street preacher says, well then it's time to move on the street preacher, time to take that street preacher off the street.
Their last stop of the day was City Hall, but it's just the beginning of their campaign. Helen Drew, BBC London.
These are not good times to be a Christian. This is because 1 in 7 people baptized lives in a country where they suffer some form of persecution. This is according to the latest report of the Pontifical Foundation of Aid to the Church in Need. It reveals that out of 196 countries, 38 are exposed to serious or extreme violations of religious freedom. For this reason, Aid to the Church in Need is carrying out this report to remind everyone that there are still people who are killed for their faith. This organization has been raising awareness about the persecution of Christians throughout the world since 1947.
Not being aware is one of the causes that lead to indifference. This report is not expressing an opinion, but facts.
The facts and figures confirm that the situation's getting worse for countries such as North Korea, Saudi Arabia, Nigeria, Afghanistan, or Eritrea.
What the report reveals and contains is that the community of faith that still suffers most from religious persecution and oppression continues to be the Christian community. There are about 300 million Christians who suffer daily oppression for their faith.
Persecution and hatred of the faith is also appearing in other forms. For example, religious nationalism is beginning to occur in India and is present in China as well as North Korea.
It is the reality that religious minorities or all religions are perceived as disloyal, foreign, and an attack on the unity of the country.
Despite the negative reports, there are examples of courage and resistance. In Egypt, the hard-hit Christian community perseveres in faith. Additionally, in Pakistan, Christians raise their voices so their rights are no longer violated.
I was born in a village where we were given permission to demolish the old church, but we had to wait 18 years to get permission to rebuild it.
But I think the poverty and the lack of education of
our Christians is the basis on which the Islamic fundamentalists abuse their social, political, economic, and religious powers. Religious freedom is not a lost cause, though. In some countries, the situation has improved, like in Syria and Iraq after the disappearance of the Islamic State. However, they still have a long way to go to definitively eradicate the jihadist mentality.
You have to know where to look. Hidden in a block of flats, behind a bolted door. This is what faith looks like in China. Xu Yonghai has run this underground church in Beijing since 1989. He's been to prison or re-education through labor camps 3 times because of his beliefs. But these are the darkest days he's known, as the Chinese Communist Party stamps down on any version of religion that doesn't acknowledge its supremacy.
我们主耶稣，我们是高举爱呀，我们是连仇敌都爱，他高举街头扔，高举这个，最起码他当年把这些个牧师长老抓起来，都是因为这些敌人，这都是帝国主义侵略中国的被利用的工具，肯定是我们都能感觉到宗教不自由。
China is officially an atheist state, with freedom of religion guaranteed in the constitution. State-sanctioned churches do exist, but the power and glory belongs to the party. It keeps tight control. Worshippers are registered, CCTV cameras fitted, and the Bible is even being retranslated by the government to ensure what they call correct understanding. But unofficial churches were tolerated, until recently. Police closed this one by force in Chengdu, southwest China, in December last year. This Beijing church was also shut down in another raid last year, after its leaders refused to install CCTV cameras. You used to get throngs of worshippers coming here. It was one of the biggest underground churches in China. And now there's not much left to see. We tried to go in, they said, well, there's nothing here. Then we said what we wanted to see, they said the police have shut it down. And in any case, the lift isn't stopping at the 3rd floor. There's no trace left. And that's what people practicing Christianity in China fear. They'll simply be scrubbed from existence. And in March this year, another famous church with a congregation 1,000 people strong was banned. Afterwards, they pledged to hold a prayer meeting in a public square in Beijing. We also went, but the square was simply shut down by authorities. The few brave enough to come here were quietly escorted away. Undercover police officers followed us while we filmed, then approached.
Hi, sir. Hey, it's not good. Why?
A police station, opposite Pastor Shu's home church. He says it was built to keep watch over him. Everyone exists in a state of paranoia. The faithful worried for their liberty, but also the Communist Party itself, which sees threats everywhere, even here.
我们可能没有平安，也可能不知道我们未来是什么，没有平安，我们真是没有平安，看不到平安。但是呢，我们能看到我们要忍耐，多么艰难都要忍耐，坚忍下来。如同我们免了人的债，不叫我们遇见试。
And persist they will, but only as long as the party lets them. Tom Cheshire, Sky News, Beijing.
Asia Bibi, the Catholic woman set free by a Pakistani court on blasphemy charges, says she still fears for her life. The country's Supreme Court is weighing a petition from Islamic extremists who want her executed. According to a new report, she's not the only one. The persecution of Christians is on the rise around the world. Correspondent Wyatt Goolsbee has details from the State Department. Good evening, Wyatt.
Good evening, Lauren. The State Department is well aware of Bibi's case, and officials say religious freedom is a key foreign policy priority for the Trump administration. Many Americans hope that's true. The Christian advocacy group Open Doors USA says 30 million more Christians experienced persecution compared to last year. Many of them are worried they'll be forgotten.
This Christian woman tells me she lives a life of fear. Hannah is wearing a burqa because she doesn't want anyone to see her face or know her real name and country. She's from South Asia, where blasphemy laws could result in her going to jail or even death.
Imagine walking down a corridor and the walls around you beginning to come in on you, and the path that you're walking on constantly shifting, constantly changing. And that's the life of a secret believer. That's the life of a Christian.
Hannah is a teacher, but she says she can't teach what is good and true. She's forced to use biased textbooks, which paint non-Muslims as second-class citizens.
From the very earliest days of their exposure to studies, to academics, to learning, they are already being reminded, if they're Christian, they're being reminded that there's no place for you here.
Christians around the world are facing the same persecution, according to Open Doors USA. Their annual watch list identifies the worst violators of religious freedom. North Korea is number one again, but so are many countries in Asia, Africa, and the Middle East. David Curry is the group's president.
Essentially what we see is more governments using laws and their police force to control, and in some cases seeking to eliminate the expression of Christian faith.
Hannah prays that won't happen and asks everyone to do the same.
So pray that the Spirit of God would remind us that we are not forgotten and that we are part of a communion of saints and a cloud of witnesses who is ever glorifying His name.
Another disturbing trend, according to Open Doors, more governments are starting to use technology like facial recognition to spy on Christians. China has asked for cameras to be installed in churches so officials can monitor the people in the pews. Lauren?
Correspondent Wyatt Goolsbee reporting from the State Department. Thank you, Wyatt.